Think of ancient Egypt, and a specific image likely comes to mind. Elegant figures draped in sheer white linen, wearing elaborate makeup, and lounging in the shade of a lush garden villa. This image of a clean, orderly society comes directly from the ancient Egyptians themselves. In elite tombs, we find perfectly preserved scenes of lords in spotless clothing, forever captured in a state of youthful vigor. These paintings functioned as a magical insurance policy. The Egyptians believed that tomb art could come to life in the next world, so the wealthy commissioned artists to depict life exactly as they wanted it for eternity. In a civilization where up to 95% of the population could not read or write, a tiny group of high-ranking families held an absolute monopoly on the historical narrative. But the physical archaeological record tells a different story. When we look past the murals, the sanitized fantasy of the elite begins to crumble. To understand how Egyptians truly lived, we have to look past the artwork and examine the grit and bone left behind in the sand. For a small group of high-ranking officials and their families, life was a highly sheltered experience, protected from the heat and dust of the surrounding Sahara. The upper class lived in two-story mud brick estates. These homes featured brightly painted frescoes and private walled gardens designed to create a private, temperate world away from the sun. They kept their living spaces sparse, but the furniture they did own was sophisticated. This gilded cedar bed frame used a carved crescent-shaped headrest rather than a soft pillow to keep the sleeper's head elevated and cool. Maintaining this appearance required an intense daily routine. Elite Egyptians used bronze razors, wore elaborate wigs, and applied heavy coal and green eye paint stored in fine alabaster jars. They layered themselves in heavy jewelry as a mark of status. Gold pendants and broad beaded collars served as immediate visual indicators of their rank and wealth. This class was exempt from all physical labor. Men served as scribes and bureaucrats, spending their days managing estates, hunting for sport, or playing board games, while servants attended to every chore. Within this circle, women could own property and independently initiate a divorce. However, these privileges existed inside a sheltered bubble, allowing high-ranking families to live in total isolation from the struggles of the people who funded their lifestyle. The other 95% of the population lived a reality that never made it onto the tomb walls. Peasant families lived in small, single-room mud huts built just above the floodplain and exposed to the elements. In state-planned workers' towns like Cahoon, laborers were housed in cramped, barracks-like units arranged in a strict grid, with thousands of people living in forced proximity. This housing was tied to labor, leaving families vulnerable. In the village of Deir el-Medina, if a worker died, his widow faced immediate eviction to make room for the next laborer. Their clothing was as basic as their shelter. Adults wore simple, rough linen sheaths, while children generally wore nothing at all until they were old enough to join the workforce. Their lives were defined by repetitive physical exertion. Beyond subsistence farming, the state conscripted them for corvée labor, forced service maintenance on irrigation dikes, gold mining, or hauling the massive stone blocks used for the pyramids. The state collected a massive share of every harvest as tax. If a farmer defaulted, they were dragged before a scribe and flogged with wooden sticks at a whipping post. The skeletons of these workers reveal the physical cost. Many show stunted growth from poor diets and spinal damage from years of heavy lifting. Parasitic diseases like schistosomiasis were common from hours spent standing in the stagnant water of irrigation canals. The perfect health shown in Egyptian art was a deliberate elite cover-up. For the working majority, life was a cycle of relentless labor and physical exhaustion. Egypt maintained its core national structure for 3,000 years, outlasting the rise and fall of countless empires in neighboring Mesopotamia. This stability relied on a rigid, stratified hierarchy. The state functioned through an authoritarian system that enforced a social order from the first pharaohs until the Roman conquest in 31 BC. The gold jewelry and painted murals found in museum exhibits represent a narrow reality. These artifacts were the tools of a tiny ruling class, designed to project their personal comfort into eternity. Building monuments on this scale required immense human sacrifice. These structures are the physical evidence of a system that prioritized the legacy of the few over the lives of the many. When we look at the wonders of ancient Egypt, we must look past the pristine white linen. The survival of the fantasy depended on the sweat, the bones, and the unrecorded labor of the people who built it.